My next guest was building a career in the Australian Army when his mum bought a childcare centre to fulfil a lifelong dream, to help grow and educate young minds. But the reality was that there was so much time spent running and administering that business. It meant that part of her dream was crumbling. Mark Woodland decided to quit his job and help his mum. There had to be a better way. He taught himself how to code and created Explore, a platform simplifying compliance while increasing parent participation and improving education outcomes. He'd sell his company in 2020 to US private equity in a deal reportedly valuing Explore at roughly $100 million. He tried his hand at retirement. We'll have a chat to him about how long that lasted. Not too long, really, because Mark Woodland is back. He's building a new business, and this one is aimed at improving the aged care sector. Mark, welcome to How I Made It.
No, thanks for having me.
Let's start with the journey. I mentioned you entered the Australian Army, but to get us to that point, what were you like as a kid?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You'd probably have to ask my teachers, but I like to think I was pretty good. I really enjoyed school, so I have this sort of not a running argument with my daughter who's not a big fan of school. She likes staying home and relaxing, whereas I was really upset if I didn't get to go to school. So even if I was sick, I wanted to go to school, hang out with my friends, play sport, live for the lunch hour type thing, and really enjoyed that. So lots of extracurricular activities, be it music or air cadets or pretty much anything that was available I would do because I just enjoyed hanging out. So I don't know if I was a great academic student. I think I was fine, but I definitely enjoyed just being social at school.
The social aspects of education. Okay. So you enjoy school. Do you go to university?
I tried. I tried multiple times. I couldn't stick at it. I did a Bachelor of Law and Behavioural Science, and I lasted probably about a year and a half before I gave up. So
law will do that to you.
Too much Suits. So, yeah, spent too much time watching Suits and thought that was what it was all about. So
yeah. Okay, so no, I've often said I feel like university is more of an endurance race.
Yeah.
It's not actually all that difficult, but it just is a bit of a battle to get through. Okay, so what happens then? You sort of try your hand at it, doesn't go, it's not for you. What do you decide to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a lot of part-time jobs. I worked at the sink warehouse, which back in the day, you'd put the little holes where the tap would go. So I'd just sort of punch these holes into these sinks, and yes, there are left and right sinks, so I'd get that wrong often, and you'd have to put the hole for the tap in the right spot, and then I'd pack that up in a box and send it out. So that was my job. I was at McDonald's for a period, just doing random things, and then sort of started running out of options and things to do, and that's where the army popped up.
So it just popped up. Was it someone mentioned it to you? Was there an ad you saw?
And my family has been in the army. My brother, who passed, was in the army at that point. He'd just gone into Kapooka. He was my younger brother. So definitely aware of it. I did air cadets at school, so I was aware of sort of the system and was quite comfortable in that world. So it just made sense. I was much fitter than I was today, so that wasn't a problem. And so, yeah, I signed up in about 2002 and went to Kapooka.
As you do. Okay. What was it like? You mentioned how you sort of studied law. You thought it would be like Suits. Did you have an idea of what you thought the army would be like, and did it live up to the expectation?
Short answer is I had no idea is the truth, but I had sort of an understanding from air cadets, and yes, that was Air Force, it wasn't Army, but you sort of got a taste of going to the Air Force Base, you got a taste of promotion courses, you got a taste of those types of things. The Army was a whole different thing completely, but the discipline, the drill, I say playing a game, but just understanding the purpose of Kapooka and not getting lost in thinking about what's going to happen in tomorrow or the next day, and just doing sort of one step at a time. And it was fun, and made some amazing friends. Even now, we caught up at Anzac Day, haven't seen each other for 10 years, and it's like nothing changed. So it's you make these lifelong friends, and they get you through it. And, in the scheme of things, it's not that difficult, Kapooka. It's definitely challenging, but compared to your rest of your career, it's it's barely a taste of what the army's like.
I mentioned in our introduction that you'd leave the army. Your mum had bought a childcare centre. When you were building your career in the army, though, did you think that you were going to be sort of a long-term member of the armed forces? That was going to be your life?
I think so. There was no intent to leave the Defence Force. There was definitely intent to do different things within the Defence Force. So I started off in artillery, and then I went into the psychology corps probably four years later. And so there was always opportunities that the Army or the Defence Force was there. So it was could have been quite a exciting career, and I would have stayed. It was no other reason except to help Mum, listening to her with the challenges each sort of afternoon, and realising that maybe I could do something, maybe I couldn't. The worst case for me is I'd go back into the Defence Force, so that wasn't a huge sort of risk. And I stayed in the reserves still when I was helping Mum, so that I always had that connection. It was sort of a few years after that, in sort of 2014, 15-ish, when I stopped being in the reserves and really cut ties. That was sort of a realisation that that's it now. And then only recently I've spent longer out of the army than I've spent in. So that whole time shift has occurred as well. So there's a few key milestones that have occurred.
The identity shifts. Let's talk about that time then. So your mum buys a childcare centre. How old are you? Early 20s at this point?
Yeah, good question. So that was in 2010. Yeah, it'd be late 20s. And yeah, mum bought a childcare centre. She retired. She was always a teacher at heart, principal of schools, and went through those schooling sort of ranks, for lack of a better word. But her passion was teaching, and she's a really good teacher, and parents love her. Children and students love her, and that's what she loves doing herself. But when you're running a business, and this might not sound like a big eye-opening statement, but you're running a business. You're collecting rent, or you're paying rent. You're collecting invoices or fees in this case. You're paying staff. You're collecting all that type of stuff. So that takes time. It's a lot of admin. So the more you're doing that stuff, the less you're actually teaching.
And so her intent at that point is she's enjoyed teaching so much, but she wants to get in at the early childhood level, and she feels she can make a difference in young kids' lives. And so to do that, presumably she wants to teach them and be involved in that. And then all of a sudden she finds herself without the time, or as much time as she wants, to invest in the education. Instead, it's like you say, it's working out tax, it's working out staff payments, it's paying your rent.
Yeah.
And so did she get quite unhappy? Did you notice a change in her?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, dare I say it, but stress or pressure with all of these, and especially when you're not doing something you love, is sort of when you start getting disheartened with everything. So when you're no longer teaching or doing anything you love, and you see this a lot in service sector, or in the service sector. So nurses are sort of very similar, where they'll study for long periods of time, but as they progress through their career, they're actually not helping as many people because they're doing an admin role, which is really interesting to watch, because you would assume the more experienced a teacher or a nurse or pick a profession, you'd probably want that teacher working with the children, not doing the admin, because they've been in the sector for such a long time and they've got a lot of experience they can share. But these sectors operate in the opposite. The people with less experience than the person that's been there for the longest is the one teaching, and they're in an admin role. So if you're not passionate about admin, which some people aren't, and you're not good at it, which I'm not great at it, it's not fun. And you can't be spending sort of all your life savings trying to build a business if you're not enjoying it. It's very, very upsetting. So that was really what I noticed, and it was just really trying to help Mum with some of those challenges. It was pretty much, whatever you don't want to do, I'll do that. So you can teach, and you can work with staff, and you can work with parents, and you can build the business. And that's how we approached it.
Okay. But you're in the Australian Army. So I don't want to cast so much judgment here, but I'm not sure that you've got the skill set there, Mark.
I don't. I've got zero skill set. No, and even today, like I work with far smarter people than me. There's zero skill set. I think what I can do though is it's really leadership. When you're running a business, there's not much else to it. And it's also just a willingness to do whatever it takes. And usually that's the stuff that no one wants to do, and that's the stuff that has to get done. So I'm happy to do that. And I've said to people that have worked with me who run their own businesses, look, if this all doesn't work, can I sweep the floors in your business so we've got something I can do after this? Because I'm not sure anyone's going to hire me. I'm not sure I can get a job out there. I don't have the skill set that, a lot of other people do. I'm more of a generalist. I don't have any specific skill set. So, yeah.
Sure, you're a generalist that sold a business that was valued at $100 million. No problems. I can't let you talk yourself down that much.
Yeah, there's just no, like, I've got nothing outside, things to show for it from physical success. There's no qualification that sort of says I can do this. And if you compared me to someone else in a job interview, I'd probably lose. So yeah, it's more sort of that idea that it's just about hiring the right people and then leading those people, making the decisions where you can as quickly as you can, and then getting on with it. So that's pretty much all I did.
Hopefully this might inspire people who might be listening who feel that perhaps maybe they've got imposter syndrome or they don't have all of the boxes ticked, but you can build a business without all of that. Let's talk about how you help your mum then. She's got all these frustrations. And so, yes, you'll jump in to do some of these tasks. It just involves some time. But then you do teach yourself to code, is my understanding. Why did you do that? And what does it help you do?
It was solely because we couldn't afford someone else to do it. So there were no websites. Like, this was 2010. So from a technology world, this is when the iPad was first released. Facebook was becoming cool. We didn't have websites. We just bought this childcare centre. Nothing was digitized. All enrollments were paper-based. Even when you walk into the childcare centre, parents would get their weekly statements in a pigeonhole that was on the wall. And you'd be printing invoices out, and the childcare system itself was paper-based, and you'd physically sign on a piece of paper when you attended, when you left. It was quite bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a small child. I find it difficult enough, let alone pieces of paper.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and then people would lose that paper, and they were legal records. And then what are you doing? You sort of just, it was a mess. And then even little things like people's credit card details were written on Post-it notes and sort of just stuck. It was like, this is wild, wild west stuff. And so coming into it, I was from a regulated sector, being the Defence Force, but I've never seen anything like this. Like, this regulation, all for the right reason, was a lot. And it was all done on paper. So I made grand statements of, surely someone's fixed this. This is mad. But there wasn't anything in the market that was doing what everyone wanted it to do, which was digitizing enrollments. And even at that point, you'd talk to the government, and they didn't believe in digital signatures because they weren't real, and how dare you suggest that, and it's got to be paper-based, and that's obviously changed. But you're just up against everything. So our sort of attitude was, we can't afford it, might as well try it. How hard could it be? I regret that statement. And then it was just getting it done. And that's what we did. It wasn't anything except, if we don't do this, then we need to be happy with the result of being unhappy. And we can't really complain because we haven't done anything about it.
So yes, you're sort of we might as well give this a go, because otherwise we'll pull our hair out and complain about it, and we should just at least try. So you try. You learn to code. It's harder than you think, based on your earlier statement. But at this point, are you thinking in your mind about formulating or creating a business, or is it still just, I have to have a way here to help mum with all of this administrative bollocks, to be quite blunt?
I mean, it was formulating a business in the sense that the one we had. So not a software business or anything like that. It was, how do we save this 33-place childcare centre, which is tiny, and make sure mum's passion doesn't die. That was it. There was no intent for anything else. Oh, we could sell this or anything like that. The first customer I ever got was from another childcare centre, and they had seen something I was doing, and they said they love it. And I just said, yeah, cool, you can use the software. Let me know what you think. And even at that point, it wasn't about selling it. It was just, hey, here you go, knock yourself out. Because again, it wasn't developed in that way. It was made solely for our benefit to help us. And it just turned out that our problems were everyone's problems in the sector. And that's when it started moving pretty quickly.
So you effectively gift your software to another operator. They have a go. They tell you this is actually really, really good. How do you then set this up as a business? How do you then say, actually, we might be onto something here. This is going to help the entire industry. Do you then go about setting up your company at that point?
Yeah, short answer is yes. I think when I look back, and I don't spend a lot of time looking back because I'm trying to look forward of what's next and what has to be done, but there's a lot of timing that worked out really, really well. So we had the opportunity at that point, so this is 2016, to sell the childcare centres, and we just got an offer. And the first offer we said no, because at this point we had 3 centres. Everything was good for the first time in history for us. It was great.
And sorry, can I just go back a little step? Because I think we've been talking about the one centre.
Yeah, sorry.
And then you roll out the software and then things become easier. So your mum then feels like we can actually expand now.
Correct.
So that software then allows the family to buy a couple other centres.
Yeah, so we were able to get the first childcare centre up to full occupancy, which again, 33 kids, not a huge achievement, but it was big for us, which allowed us to buy another childcare centre, which was sort of next door to the MCG, and it was a 100-place childcare centre, so 3 times the size of what we'd been working with. That went well, and then 12 months after, we built a 200-place childcare centre, so very big, on St Kilda Road. So they were the 3 centres we had. We thought we'd open a few more as well. We were looking at other sites, and that's what I thought my career now was building these centres. It was doing really, really well. We were trying different things. We were pretty happy with that. And then that's when we had an offer to purchase the centres, and it was more, this would allow mum then to retire, achieve sort of those goals as well. So that became exciting. And then that allowed me to have a thought process of, well, then what am I going to do next? I'm sort of back in the army maybe. They probably wouldn't want me after this period of time. Or, hey, maybe there's something in this software, and that's the path we ended up going down. Okay, so
you've got the offer, but so there was an initial offer and you say no to that. Do they come back with a higher offer, or then someone else comes in to take the...
Then someone else came in after that. We just said no because we didn't want to sell. We'd finally have the businesses in a position we were happy with, and now all of a sudden we had to leave. We weren't super excited by that. We hadn't enjoyed it. We were too busy working in it. So we turned it down solely because that was never the purpose of building the business.
But then another offer comes along that you just can't turn down?
Yeah, pretty much. It was just too good. So we had to do it. Well,
all right. So, well, you know,
that's what we told ourselves. Yeah.
Okay. So your mum's able to retire, and then you're sitting there going, okay, well, what do I do next? Did you seriously think about going back to Defence Forces?
Yeah. Again, it goes back to sort of that first statement of what skill set do I have to offer? None. Not like Army's second choice. It was, I know the defence. I've got the skill sets in defence.
You know how to do it.
Yeah, and I might be useful. But what am I going to do now?
Okay, even though you've just developed all this software and that's okay, Mark. All right. So then what? So you don't go back to the Defence Forces?
No.
So what happens at that moment?
So launched Explore. So 2016 launched Explore. Spoke to the childcare centre that was already using it. They started paying for it at that point. So had first customer. They then started growing. They went from 3 centres to 30 odd now.
And when you say they started paying for it, was it sort of just a one payment fee? So they bought your software, or was it on a subscription model at that point? Because I'm thinking 2016, you know, the subscriptions sort of hadn't really evolved to the point that they have today.
Yeah, so it was subscription. So they would pay about $100 a month. And I had a customer. Right. Yeah, no, that's pretty good. So it was good. It was a good way to start. And then it was really, okay, now what? We've got this software. How do you sell technology? How do you build engineering teams? I've got no clue. So just approached the people I knew in the sector and said, hey, I'm out now, but now I'm doing this software. Do you want to start using it? Started tapping into my own family network. My family's a lot of teachers. So they reached out to different childcare centres they knew. And we just sort of did this bootstrappy thing to get customers. And it turned out we got customers and the software was good. And now we had the problem of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it had this feature or this thing? Or couldn't it do this? And going, yeah, that'd be all cool, but I don't know how to do that. So we started to build teams, trying to find engineers, went down the offshoring path of engineers, and that's difficult if you've never done that before.
Why is that?
It's more management. In 2016, it's also this world where it wasn't remote working. And so if you did have a remote working team, that was really weird. So time zones were difficult, language barriers were difficult, my own communication and inability to communicate clearly what I needed built and how I needed it built and the why behind that was a big issue as well. It was just all of these challenges that were stacking up, thinking this is going to be painful.
So did you feel that you were growing your business to a point, so you've rolled it out, you've got people using the software, they're now asking you for a few more bells and whistles, and you think, yeah, actually this is really, really cool. And you start to expand your company and you get people on and then all of a sudden it becomes really difficult. I'm assuming you're wasting money at this point. You're burning through. Yeah.
Lots of money being not wasted, but invested, or burnt is another term. But, yeah, and really the realization of, why am I back here again? I experienced sort of 3-4 months of peace because the businesses in the childcare centres were doing well. And now I'm back here in this struggle, like, what have I done? But we just kept struggling along. And then beginning of 2016, the same sort of period this was happening, Airtree, so Daniel Petrie reached out through one of his associates at that point, who I told to go away because I thought it was email spam. I didn't know what a VC was. I thought that was a Victoria Cross recipient, not a venture capitalist. So, and I knew no Victoria Cross recipients would be contacting me. So in my mind, it was spam. Then Daniel reached out and said, "I don't think you realize who we are." And I said, "Yeah, no,
don't you know who I am?"
Correct, I don't. And that's not your fault. Like 100%, I just don't know. And we started that sort of conversation, and it was about June of that year they invested. So
how did you come across Airtree's radar? Was someone working at the VC, they had kids in a childcare centre and it came around just software, or have you got any idea?
I should ask that question, but Paul Bennett's reached out. So he was an associate at Airtree at that point, and he was doing his research and just looking around.
Because it usually goes the other way. There are people in business who have to really shake the tree and they really want to get some venture capital or early
I didn't even know that was an
option.
I didn't know what a venture capitalist was. I didn't think we'd raise money. I didn't know what that was.
So it's bootstrapped to this point. You're just using the revenue that you've got from your early stage customers to fund your offshore workers and to try and build it. And you sort of almost, I feel like maybe you're sort of like a little hamster on the wheel, like you're running really fast, but not really getting anywhere.
Yeah, correct.
Airtree sort of approaches you, these Victoria Cross recipients come, like the angels that they are, and then they invest in the business.
Yes. And so that was the first experience with board meetings. That was the first experience with legal DD in terms of tech and hiring engineering teams. But once we started speaking to the team at Airtree, we knew exactly that, this is what we needed. We needed to support hiring people from the tech world that I didn't know any, who have done this before, who could build these teams, could help me grow the business. I was fine with the product and what needed to be built and the pain points in childcare. That's fine. Yep. But what I didn't have the skill set for was how do you build sort of these world-class teams and hire engineers and CTOs, and how do you actually get some process behind this thing?
So they come in, I mean, do they have the minority stake or did they take a majority position?
Minority, yeah.
Minority. So they take a minority position, but then they bring all of the expertise along with them.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're off and away then at this point. You've got the expertise, you're growing things. Does it then allow you to expand quite rapidly from that point?
Yeah, so the first couple of years of Explore were hectic, really painful and really bad. But I had no idea what I was doing. So made a lot of bad hiring decisions, built a terrible culture.
Hang on, I thought Airtree were coming. You're Victoria.
No, this is all me, all my mistakes. And built because I was just hiring solely because we needed people, not because we were trying to build a culture and what that would result in. We expanded all over the world and spread ourselves very, very thin. And so then we had to hire even faster to fix those mistakes. And you sort of just had this constant catching up from the mistakes Mark was making. So sort of 2018 was the reset point for us where the culture was just so bad that we had to fix it. And we had to build a company based on values that we deeply believed in. So we did. And a lot of people had to leave the company at that point. We had to make some terrible decisions, some really hard decisions, some easy decisions, and really decide what we stood for. And that was the accelerating point.
Okay, we might take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about this acceleration because it sounds like things got really difficult, dark at times.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it was necessary. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to work. So when we come back, we'll talk about how you accelerate things, how you go from it being a little bit of a mess to then becoming a company that's then sold for a valuation of $100 million. We'll do that when we come back. Welcome back to How I Made It. I'm chatting to Mark Woodland, who created a company called Explore. It was a journey to get there, Mark, can I say. You didn't sort of set out to create a business, but you end up doing that. You get investment from a venture capitalist. Airtree come along. They can help you with some insights and some background, but you go about building a business, employing people, and then into that journey, it's just not working. You haven't got the right culture. People are going in different directions. Is it fair for me to say it's all a bit of a mess at this point in time?
Yeah, I think any sane person, and this I think is the difference, anyone honestly smart, the right decision would be the quit and the stop and sort of wind it down. Like that would be the right decision on paper, and it would probably be taught at business school and things. This is when you shut the business. This is when you stop. We just didn't stop, and we knew we had a lot of things to fix.
So why is that? So you think so the logical decision is this is just a mess. We haven't got the right environment for this. I'm just making an assumption that perhaps you're losing money at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's just like, maybe it's not quit while you're ahead, but just quit before you get further down the rabbit hole.
Pretty much.
But you don't. So why is that? What's it about you, Mark, that means that you're not a quitter?
Yeah, I'm sure there's an element there, but it's probably more the vision that still is the vision for Explore, which is to make education great, is probably a big enough one not to quit. Like education is really important and it does need some pretty big change. And I think we've been trying to change that for the last 100 odd years and haven't really done it super well. We've definitely digitized it, which is a great step, but it's still not down that personal route. It's still got a long way to go. And I'm not saying education's bad. I'm not saying the teachers are bad. I think we do more right than wrong, but we should be thinking about it. Like, let's hope it's not the same in 100 years. Because that'd be worrying.
We'll get back to your business in a second, but like, what would you do if I gave you the power right now to change things in the education system? I know it's all different states have different ways of doing things, but everything just seems stressed and stretched. If you talk to teachers now, their workloads are, hefty. So, you've been in this space. Like, would you just, what would you do?
So you have a lot of students that are great at the school system that happens now and the university system. So don't change it. That's great for them. It's perfect. They can go there. It's the exact way they learn, so keep it up. But there's not an alternate path for all those people that have to drop out or drop out at uni, drop out at school. Yeah, there used to be more of a trade path, and that was fine. But so that's an alternate as well. But there's no sort of entrepreneurial alternate where if someone's got a great idea in grade 10, why can't they raise money and why can't they start that journey now? Why do they need to finish school if they're never going to go to university? Now that's frowned upon, and I'm sure even I'm a parent, and if my child said that, I'd be worried. I get it, but why am I worried is probably the deeper question for me. It's, well, because you should finish school. So the question is why? So you can go to uni. Why? So you can drop out and realize you could have started this thing 4 years ago anyway. So that to me is sort of the blunt, basic thought process. And I'm sure educators around the world will argue with me, and rightly so. But so why don't we have a school where students are running the tuck shop or canteen, pick a state, pick your term, and the restaurant or the tuck shop's open to the public, and they're learning about customer service, and they're serving people, and they're building up menus, and they're running a business. The gyms in schools, why aren't they like 24-hour gyms or anytime fitness, and the students are running those gyms and treating them as a business? Why the schools, heaven forbid we make schooling free, and you could collect fees by the school becoming venture capitalists and investing in the ideas of the students and helping them get up to speed and getting them out into the market. These are just some very raw ideas, but I'd love to build a school that had that. And I'm not saying it's for everyone. It definitely isn't. But schooling now is also not for everyone, and we're jamming everyone through that system. And I don't think that's right. But yeah, I haven't built a school yet. I've always wanted to. I think it should be run by people that have been successful in some form of business, as well as those that haven't, because there's lessons there.
I want to build this school with you. I feel like I think we've just
I need to raise some money. But
yeah, so if there's VCs listening, so Julianne Sprague, Mark Woodland, we might come and make this happen. But let's get back to the first business at hand. We're off topic now.
Pitching ideas.
Why not? Explore. So I've got to remember where we're at in this journey. But so you're at this realization point that it's not working. Logic says you should shut it down. Really, you're not going to do that. The greater good is driving you. You want better education outcomes. So you've got to make this work. So let's talk about the mechanics of that. How do you do that? You mentioned earlier that you had to fire a whole bunch of people. That's never easy. But how did you identify who had to go out of your business? How did you work on who you needed in the business? And what did you learn from the process?
Yeah, learned a lot. And luckily I don't have to make those mistakes now, because I realize how important they are. And everyone says culture matters, but I think a lot of the times that's just a bit of a hacky throwaway line, but it really matters, especially when you've experienced the opposite. So we had to figure out what we stood for. And as a founder, one of the cool things you get to do is you get to build values and culture and breathe life into the company. That's exciting, and you should be excited by that. You've only got yourself to blame based on that culture then of how it moves forward. So just sat down with some key team who'd been with me from the start, are still with me in Kismet, and said, look, what do we stand for? What are our values? Who are we as human beings? Because that's pretty much how the company is going to take on, and what do we expect? And so we came up with the 3 values, and we still sort of have those 3 values in Kismet as well, because you can't really escape them, which was be humble. I think that's one of the most important values that we have. A lot of people see humbleness as a weakness, and it's a weak word. I disagree with that. I think you have to be quite confident in yourself. You have to be quite confident to give someone else the credit. You have to be confident in yourself that, you're doing it for the right reason, and you're not out there for ego. I think ego gets in the way a lot, and I think tech is very ego based. Look at me type stuff. And really you haven't done a lot. Embrace change. I thought that was really important. It ties to the humbleness value, though. If we're expecting education to change and we're not willing to change, then who are we to ask others to change? Finally, the last value, which is what we have today, is do something, which I really like. And that's coming through because I get stories from people going home and their partners are telling them to do something, like just do something, get up and do something. So I really like that. And do something for us is it doesn't matter what you're going to do. If you're being humble, if you're embracing change, that do something action value, you're not going to break anything. So we'd rather you try something or do something than sit there and say, I didn't know, I wasn't told, I was waiting for someone to give me direction. Just try it. Just fix it if it's wrong, or well done if it's right. And it's just that attitude of doing something quickly. So
you have the values in place. Does that then help guide you when you're employing new people into the business? And how does the business survive in that point when you're having a clear out and you've got new people coming in? I mean, it must be chaotic.
It's bad. I don't recommend. I recommend it, but strap in is pretty much the advice. It's going to be hard and it's going to be borderline sort of catastrophic if you don't execute it quickly. So the first thing we did was I stood up and said, everyone, look, we got it wrong to this point. Very, very wrong. We all know it. We all can feel it. Something's not right. And here's the values that we're going to move forward with. And if that doesn't fit what you believe in, then it's time to go. And so naturally people stood up and walked out.
And did you offer them payouts or that sort of stuff, or was it just this is a line in the sand? This is what
it was. A line in the sand. Forward? I mean, if people did resign and wanted to talk about it, then yes, we did. But for those that just sort of stormed out, that was sort of their resignation, and they didn't come back, which is fine. It's great because then I didn't have to do the hard work. They've sort of forced me to deal with it, which again is a good thing. So that was really hard. Very senior people that we probably needed left, and surprisingly, the people that stayed stood up, stepped in, fixed, solved, grew the business, because it turns out those values were the right values that Explore needed. They're not the right values for someone else, but they were the right values for us. And
so how many people left the business and how many people remain?
60% probably left, maybe more. Probably more.
Okay.
There are a lot.
Yeah, righto. Okay. And then the soldiers, sorry to use some defence terminology, but the soldiers who remain, like they're in the trenches then, right? Yep. Because you haven't then been able to get the extra resources in at this point, I'm thinking. But so how quickly do you have to move to ensure that those people who you probably want to retain in your business don't burn out or don't go, oh, mate, this is ridiculous. How do you navigate this change?
Yeah, it was almost instant, the culture. And when you look back, it looks instant, but yeah, it's definitely a couple of years of building, but it felt instant. And we were able to build teams quickly because I remember speaking to Caitlin, who was my head of people at that point, and she'd only been here a short period of time. I said, look, we've got to hire 100 people in the next 3 months. And she had a minor heart attack because that's a big job. But she came up with this way that we would interview based on values where, there's probably about 3 interviews that you would do if you're a new person. You'd meet with your manager and the team and you'd do the technical stuff. But then at the very end, for all these 100 people, I would interview every single one and explain what the values meant and why they were so important and what we're trying to achieve. And so I did that. And I did a lot of meetings and interviews, and that was really hard because there's a lot of other things going on, but the interview hiring was really important to get it right because we knew the pain if we got it wrong.
Okay. All right. So you get the business back on track. You do the 100 interviews and get your new team around you. I'm trying to get the timing right. I'm thinking now is it 2018 or 2019 where things are back on track?
Yeah.
And so then do you just roll out across the country from this point? Do you love how I made it sound like, now it's just all easy? It's
weird. 2018 was rebuilding. 2019 was the most amazing year ever, and lots of fond memories. And the team that was there between 2018 and 2020 still catch up to this day. They're all at different places all around the world, which is really great, which was always a goal. I always said to the team, as long as you've got that orange rocket on your resume, the goal is that you don't have to interview anywhere else because they just love you and they know the great work you've done at Explore. So not good for me because I got to keep doing these interviews, but great for you. But 2019 was when it really kicked off. Culture was great. Everyone living the values. Customers were signing up. Also, to be fair, there was a catalyst in the sector where the government made a bunch of changes in the childcare sector, and we were primed for that. We had the software. They were forcing people onto software. They were digitizing signatures finally. And again, it's this timing thing. We had prepared for this, and we executed on it. So it was just this magical timing that everything happened.
Right time, right place the business finds itself in. So you enjoy incredible growth, and then in 2020 there's an offer to buy this business. Is there a process that might be similar to what happened with the original childcare businesses where you just go, no, we're flying away, we don't need to talk to you, thanks very much? Or was it far more simple?
It was a little bit different because by this stage I knew what raising money was and what VCs were. So we were out there looking to raise our next round now that everything was good. We were growing very, very well. And so we were out there meeting US venture firms and things like that. So from that process that came from that, because we're out there, people reached out, and that's where Advent reached out. Again, this timing thing, that they'd moved into a New Zealand company, they'd just acquired that, they were looking at expanding, and it just so happened we were part of that strategy. So we just went through the process, and we met a lot of people, and I sat my team down and I said, look, these are the options on the table. We can raise money, we can keep doing this on our own, or we could do it like this, where nothing really changes except we just don't own the company anymore. Someone else does, and we're just working with them to achieve the same outcome, but with far more resources than we've ever had. And the team chose the Advent path, and off we went.
Deep pockets. So the team chose it. You didn't? Did you?
I couldn't care less. Nicely,
really?
Like if I had to keep doing it the way we were doing it, I was fine with that. If this was an opportunity that allowed us to do it faster, to execute the vision faster, then I'm fine with that. But either way, now at this point, after the darkness of 2017, couldn't care. Like it was going to be fine.
Do you then remain within the business? So it's sold. There's new owners. They lock you up for a period of time. I'm just going to make assumptions here, but that would be crazy for them not to. And so, how long are you required to stay within the business?
I mean, in my mind, I'd stay for as long as people wanted me. Like it's and until people get sick of me, I'm happy to stay. But I stayed for probably 3 years working with the private equity guys, growing the business, doing a bunch of acquisitions, trying to realize that vision. What became really exciting is the whole company rebranded to Explore. So that was a really wow moment. So all the That's existing brands that existed came under the Explore brand. So that was really cool. I love the private equity guys. I love Advent. They've always been supportive of me. So I always heard horror stories of private equity, but I didn't get any of that. So I really enjoyed it. So I did that.
So what happens then? So I mentioned in our introduction that you give retirement a go. So there's a decision made somewhere, Mark. We go, actually, I reckon I can just retire now. And I did also mention it didn't last long, but let's talk about you decide to exit. Yeah.
So it's this timing thing. It was just after COVID. So the company was acquired in 2020 of March. That's when COVID hit. So my introduction to mergers and acquisitions and quadrupling team sizes and the world of private equity was all done for the first time remotely through a pandemic, managing teams' mental health and again, we're in Melbourne, so we experienced the joys of Melbourne lockdowns, but it wasn't fun. Like for those 2 years, that was really, really hard. So there was a lot of work that went through that period. So by the time I had the opportunity to leave Explore, it was getting ready to IPO, and so it was just good timing. I thought I might have a break and relax, and we'd just bought 20 acres, so I've got a tractor now and slashing and all that fun stuff. And I thought, I'll just do this. I can mess around.
So 20 acre, some regional Victoria, you've got.
Well, it's actually in kangaroo ground, so it's probably only 30 minutes from the city thereabouts, 35, 40 minutes. It's close.
So you want the easy life, and you mentioned earlier Kismet, which is the new business you've started. So I don't know what's happened with you on that tractor, but
I don't know either.
You don't take to it too well, or I don't know. But then you decide to just jump back into building a new business. What was the genesis for that? What were you thinking? And let's talk about what Kismet is.
So my mother-in-law was speaking to me about some of the challenges she was having with her mother and being on the aged care plan and how to navigate that and how difficult it is with all the admin that sits around that type of stuff. And when you dig a bit deeper, you see this sandwich generation that gets stuck in the middle these days. You've got an aging population being that baby boomer generation, which is probably the biggest ever, all being encouraged to age in place. So then you've got that sandwich generation, which are Gen Xers and millennials in the middle there, that have their own dependent children, that are struggling with their own living costs and potential recessions and wars and pretty grim picture, but now they've got the burden of caring for their elderly parents. Now, for most of that millennial Xers, they're not there yet. But in the next 5 to 10 years, when that baby boomer generation properly ages at 75 to 80 years old, we will be. And I don't think we're ready. I don't think we understand what's coming, and it's worrying. So when I was hearing all this and then started digging a bit deeper, I made the grand statement again of surely someone's doing something to solve this. Surely the admin's being reduced, because the saddest thing you see when someone ages is usually a sibling, or most time a child of the parent, and usually the eldest daughter is the one that's forced to manage the family. And what happens, though, is really sad, is that relationship between daughter and mother in this example starts switching to carer and care receiver. And then at the end of the life of the parent, that person that's been providing all that care and administration and managing the other siblings that help out and managing trips to the hospital and medicine and all the rest of the things has a sense of relief that they're no longer doing that, and the person they were caring for passed away, and that's sad. That's really sad, because those last years should be about building relationship. They should be out spending time with each other as much as you can, not I'm actually happy now, I can get back to my life. So we don't want that. So
what does Kismet do then? You've set this up, so there's this, and don't go, my mum had terminal cancer and died last year. I 100%.
Sorry, yeah.
But I'm the eldest daughter. The caring, the admin, it's a lot when you're working full time and you have young children too. So what's at the heart of Kismet? What does it do?
So you could think of it as your healthcare concierge. So really all you're doing is asking it. So let's stick with the mother example. If I'm caring for my mother, and my mother's goal though is to play in the park with my kids or her grandkids, then the healthcare arrangement should be based on achieving that goal, not all the other noise that sits around it. So she might need physio, she might need occupational therapy. And so what you're asking Kismet conversationally is, hey, my mum needs a physio appointment to be able to achieve this, and then Kismet will go book you in and find you that appointment. So you're not sitting there Googling, searching, trying to understand who's got availability. There's 6-month wait lists for children that need a speech therapist, and that's huge developmental delays if they don't get that now. But that's because, again, usually a mother is sitting there Googling whilst trying to work, whilst trying to manage the family, whilst trying to do 1,000 other things. And I'm not saying any of that's right, is also now on Google calling everyone saying, do you have availability? Do you have availability? Sitting on hold for 10, 12 minutes per call when they can just ask Kismet to do the work for you. So think of it as your concierge. It also will take your health insurance, so it will automatically use your private healthcare insurance, your government funded like the NDIS or aged care plans, or it will take your own contribution if all the siblings are pitching in to take care of mum in the example I was using before, and it will use that funding first before it starts asking you to pay for it or starts asking you or the parent to pay for it. So the best way is it's a concierge. It automates all the admin so you can focus on the people you love, which in this case or this example was my mum.
It sounds amazing. I've never felt more heard, Mark. But in terms of, how does it make revenue then? Is it from the health providers that sign, like they say, sign up to the platform and then you sort of just clip the ticket on the bookings? Or
Correct.
Yeah,
so the healthcare providers sign up. We send them more customers and we take care of the admin so they get paid faster, especially through government systems and things. They're not waiting as long to get paid because we've done all the fraud checks and all the stuff that happens in the back. Or the admin, in short, we've done it all. And then, surprise, surprise, you've got digital attendance now in healthcare, so you don't have to fill out 600 forms and you can just sign in and be done with it and get through quicker, especially if you've got a child sitting there having to wait in the waiting room for 5 days. Extreme
It's
example, but yeah.
No. A half-hour wait can feel like 5 days
it is,
sometimes.
especially when they're sick and they're bored and you're annoyed. Fun
times. Okay, so that's the business now, and it's going. We might have to do a follow-up maybe in a couple of years and see how things have gone. But there would have been lessons you've applied from Explore to Kismet. Mark, as part of this podcast series for How I Made It, we've asked people to get in touch with us if they want to ask a rich lister a question. And you were on our young rich list until I'm so sorry that you got above 40 years old and then had to fall off that thing.
Yeah.
You got old. But we have put the call out there for people to ask a question. And if people are listening to this and they want to ask an entrepreneur, a really good one, a question, you can email your questions to howimadeit@afr.com. Dimitri Allen from New South Wales has got in touch. Dimitri says, after throwing a well-paid job in 3 years ago, all my relationships are suffering. How do I deal with the fear and the doubt that I've made the right decision? Sounds like, I don't know what Dimitri's business is, but it sounds like he's all in at this point and it doesn't sound fun.
I think it's not comfort, but you're probably on the right path then. If it's not fun, if it's all bad everywhere else, then even in the business, you're probably on the right path. I think you'll quickly realize that friends that you thought were friends are not friends, and you have to be comfortable in forging that path if you believe in something. And sort of the last piece of advice is it can't be for money. Like, you have to be passionate about something beyond money. That's not enough reason to give up friendships. To change the world and to make education great or fix healthcare or do something, that's a big enough cause biasly for things sort of to slip.
Okay. What about advice that you've been given along the way? Has anyone given you a piece of advice that you recall and it's really stuck with you?
So Daniel Petrie has always told me to make sure I've got spend time with the kids, and he's very, very good at making sure the first question he asks me is how's the kids, not how's Kismet. So that has only become a realization for me as my kids get a little bit older, and they no longer want to hang out. And then you feel guilty for taking the meetings at night time when you should be putting them to bed. And the usual sort of thing you do at the end of the day of saying how bad a dad I was today and then need to try and fix that tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you're doing the same thing again. So that advice has always stuck with me, but I don't take it. So I don't know if it's a good thing.
So you haven't sort of put in place, do you have sort of quarantine times where you just make sure that you're present with your kids? Or
I try. It never happens. Okay. Yeah. It's just
That's
the way
right.
things happen.
People will take heart in that because everyone tries, and then we're all in the trenches. If you could go back and tell yourself something, let's think about perhaps it was when you quit the army and you're going to help your mum out and you start building things. If you could go back and tell yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
That you probably don't need that qualification to achieve. Like, I still think about going to uni just so I've got something to show for my results. But I don't know if that's a hangover of something, or the education system doing its thing. But yeah, it's more just following that passion. And I even think about if I had to tell my children that, I'd probably still struggle. And the safe bet would be go to school and do your thing and go to uni. So I don't know what's been drilled into me. Even my own journey hasn't taken that away. But yeah, it's more just that belief that you can do it and that perseverance or resilience. And one of the big debates I have with people is, how do you teach resilience to your children without making them go through the pain? And I don't know how to do that.
I was like, please tell me.
And you don't want to watch them go through the pain.
No.
It's terrible, but what do you do?
Have you read anything or listened to a podcast lately that you could recommend?
I read a book called Nuclear War, which has just come out, and it's this interesting book of what would happen if all the nukes went off, and it's not a pleasant, fun book, but it's just an interesting book.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the most recent book I've read. And podcasts, I'm always listening to podcasts.
Have you got a favourite one? I mean, How I Made It, obviously.
Yeah, that's yeah. So my second favourite one would be Jocko's podcast. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. Pretty much just yells at you the whole time to do better. So if you need some angry,
what's it called?
It's called the Jocko podcast. So Jocko or Jocko. And he's just, a lot of time he'll read war books and then break down leadership strategies and pretty much tell you that it's your fault. And if you've got a problem, you fix it. And so, yeah, you can only listen to it in small doses. But
the only person getting in the way of you is you.
Pretty much. It's all true, but it's, some days you just don't want to be told how bad you are.
Just got to pick your moments when you put that one on. Mark Woodland, it has been an absolute pleasure having a chat to you. All the very best as you build Kismet, and we'll follow the journey with interest. Thanks for joining us on How I Made It.
Thanks.